Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Data Engineering Weekly podcast. So today we are going to talk about edition 120. So Ashwin with me here, some of the
Everyone.
exciting articles that whatever we found out in the edition 120. Please, this is the place for us to come conversation. If you have not read Data Engineering Weekly 120, please go ahead and read. We'll add the link in the description here. Hello, Ashwin. How it's going for you?
Doing good, Anand. I think very exciting week ahead, and I think I am totally in love with your 120 weekly edition that you had published last week. I think I did share that with you. Exciting set of articles that we're going to discuss today. I think something that's close to both of us, right? So the catalogs, contracts, and quality. I think kind of topics that are more popular today, more relevant today. I think with the cloud warehouses, with lake houses, with storage becoming cheaper, what we have done essentially is created a dump yard, and then we have added layers on top of it to manage, monitor it, right? So I like this example. I don't remember who told me this example, right? And with that, let's start the podcast also. But let me start with this example now. So if you understand how waste segregation used to work a couple of decades back, everybody used to just put everything together and basically it goes into the dump yard and segregation happens there. Compare and contrast with at least with most countries that do it today, segregation happens at the source, and then every source is collected and disposed of separately, and it's put to good use, I think, or a better use, and there's better recycling procedures there. Now, I think a similar approach is happening with data in the warehouse world, legacy world. We were constrained on storage, so we did not firstly move everything out there. The lakes, the Hadoop world changed that. We started dumping, and the cloud warehouse which basically spoiled everyone, right? Storage was cheaper. People ended up creating dump yards. Now, to manage that segregation process, to make it more useful, to make it more relevant, we started adding a couple of layers on top. I think that's a topic that we're going to discuss as well. Let's get on, Anand.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a good way kind of starting to a discussion with none other than the favorite, the case for data contract. I think with your thoughts, I think that's a very interesting thought you kind of mentioned about we create this kind of a dump yard, and then now what we essentially did is like standardizing on the source itself. So when you have a standardization on the source, all the downstream becoming much more easier. I think that's essentially the case for data contract also kind of arguing. That's one of the first article that we wanted to discuss, written by Colin Campbell. It kind of captured the need for the data catalog. So what the article essentially does that it kind of narrate like why you are end up in the data contract space, like why you need that, and then go all the way from a business perspective, why there is no data contract solutions available, and what is a market scope for that, and what's a financial modeling for that. I think that's kind of really I liked the approach of the article. So what do you think of that article?
I think firstly, data contracts is an exciting space to become. I think coming back to the same example, I do not know, by the way, whoever is listening, that example came just out of my head. But then, yeah, that's again something that I'll relate to. Is contracts put a preventive structure in place, right? That's the core part about a contract, as opposed to you're reacting to data quality issues. I think that's something that contracts does it really well. Now, in a traditional world, I think most of us who are listening to this podcast, or me and Anand also, come from a world where we've implemented data tools or data stacks for different companies. All our focus was to drive value for the purpose of analytics or the purpose of decision making. We were so microscopically focused on that particular problem, and in the process, we ended up sacrificing the issues that may occur in the future, right? And over a period of time, when we realized that the issues could occur, then we started adding band-aids and Kool-Aids on top of it. that it was never the solution that could have happened, right? Because the more you do, you have then a spaghetti of data rules and data validations and fixes that you will do. Than understanding, hey, dear Mr. Customer, what is your requirement? Let's start documenting that. Let's also now start to understand what you need and what you expect and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, and kind of put that in both a documentation, that's one part, but I think Colin Campbell basically takes it to the technical implementation. I think that's what something that Schemata does, and I know Soda, Great Expectations, all are trying to contribute to this particular layer of building data contracts. It's a great space. I think probably segregation at source, building data contracts even before building anything else in your data pipeline or building data products, I think is the answer to better decision making and to avoid data quality issues. I think Colin Campbell basically puts a headline and says, hey, preventative data quality rather than reactive data quality. I think it should start with contracts.
Exactly. I think of working with those companies, right? One thing I really figured it out is the successful data-driven companies all does one thing very well. They create a high-quality data. I think that is the only difference between a successful data companies and non-successful data companies. If the listeners here like wanted to take one takeaway, that's it. Like just focus on creating a high-quality data. If your data creation process, if your data asset creation process is producing a very valuable information, like very high-quality data, your 95% of the problem is already solved. I think in this article, originally you talked about like preventive versus non-preventive data quality issues. The authors kind of dividing the whole data quality landscape into two parts. Like there's the data observability, and then the preventive data quality. I think that's what people call as a data testing. So there's the data observability and data testing, and the author kind of says that like data contract essentially plays a centralized role on the data, preventive data quality perspective, which is essentially the data testing side of it.
Yeah.
And also the others kind of, there's one interesting factor that is kind of, I think there's something kind of worth discussing more is the data contract is, from the author's perspective, is a technology solution rather than an organization solution. I think this is something that I'm hearing from some people, and there's some LinkedIn conversation happening. Oh, this is a people problem, and I kind of agree with what the Colin's take on that. It's a technical solution that is not a people's problem.
Yeah.
I don't know. If every problem is a people's problem, then why are we developing software?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's both, if you ask me. But then the success of data contracts will only be realized if you have a technological approach to it, as opposed to a people problem. Now, how do you solve data contracts as an organizational wide initiative, right? You can put a mandate saying that nobody creates schemas, nobody creates tables without a governance approval. Something that happens today in most organizations. In enterprises, you cannot create a fact or a dimension table in your production without a process. So the process flow is well documented, right? And there's scope for all of that. But then that's what organizational implementations would do. But then a technological implementation takes that to the next step, right? It definitely puts people in control. So people are part of the technological implementation, but then they take it one step further and helping you to integrate both upstream and downstream, right? Now, if I'm making a schema change, how can I propagate that? I think, Anand, you're a better expert on this, and I think you're building that as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think my theme was like always the data quality side and the whole data contract specialist. The tools that we are building should enable the people to create certain behavioral pattern out of it, and that derives a better data quality creation. Rather than we just say that this is a people's problem, this is a people's problem. What will happen? People are not static. People react to different situation. People join a team, people leave a team. So if our solution is just like it's a people's problem, you need to solve the people's problem, people come and go. So you will never able to solve this problem, right? That's one of the reasons. I think the second aspect largely is the when you are designing an organization, it's my belief is that nobody comes to an organization and say that I'm going to do a worst job here. Everyone come to a job to a good intention. They wanted to succeed their career. They want the organization to be succeeded. And when you get this thought process and then you say, okay, still somebody created a bad config file and then it's gone to the production and it kind of failed, then it is not the people problem. You have not have any checks and balance in order for somebody to safely deploy some configuration changes into your production.
Yeah.
So you have to really go and ask your tools, your tools and the process that you established, rather than you go and say like, this particular person did something, that's why the production is fixing, right? So I think that's a huge mindset needs to be shift if you really wanted to kind of addressing these concerns. And that's what I believe data contracts kind of bringing in, like, the tools for you to effectively create data contract. So it's more of a socio-technology solution than there's a purely technology solution here. So yeah, definitely that's a very interesting take in the article about. Okay.
Yeah, I think if you also take, I think one of the things that Colin also mentions towards the end of his blog also is around increasing speculation that data streams will basically decentralize, right? So in a heavily decentralized world where data producers take the ownership of the data that they produce, including the quality, and in a world of data as a product, in his own words, and that's a topic that is close to both of us, right? The philosophy of a data team structure is highly congruous with data contracts, right? So in a data product world, when domain teams take ownership, and when they are responsible for whatever they produce, I think it becomes all the more imperative to have a defined contract, because they don't create random things because they're coming from a domain team. So I think it's all the more important. I think the second part, I think just reiterating whatever we just said, is it is only very important to create high quality data that our end producers or end consumers consume, right? So end consumers, not producers, like, so it's very important to do that. And I think if that's the design principle that we all undertake, it should start with a contract first design. And the answer to all of that lies in documenting, as well as having the right tools so that the contracts can be both propagated upstream as well as downstream, right? It reacts to upstream changes and it can propagate downstream as well.
Right. I think you kind of mentioned about like data creation and decentralization of it, right? I strongly believe the data creation will be a decentralized process. It's never going to be a centralized process. The reason I'm saying that is, if you take the trend from pre-2008, post-2008, like 2008 is where the Hadoop is kind of really, really dominated the world, right? Pre-2008, if you search for, just to search for the Google trend of data architect, that will be an uplift of data architect role. There used to be a data architect role, just not widely spoken right now. But if you search post-2008, chief data officers, there's an uptick of chief data officer scope for that. So what is the huge difference between a data architect and chief data officer? The data architect role post 2008 just declining. It just almost never exists. I don't know anyone hiring data architect. I'm very curious to meet someone who already there.
You're right. I think
so. What the data architect supposed to do that? What the data architect supposed to do that? Right? Like data architect plays like a centralized team and say like, oh, you wanted to create this dimension, you wanted to create this fact. Okay, this is a table design for you. This is my logical diagram. This is a physical diagram. If you use tools like Airwin or like any other data tools, like data modeling tools, tuned towards enabling this data architect. It's never meant to be like a decentralized data modeling solution. It's meant to be building your build for the data architects, right? Now, the whole role is gone and we still need to model the data somehow. 2008 is like, that's what Hadoop become very popular. People now talking about like why Hadoop is like, we made a mistake and all those things. Before 2008, it's not all luxury. It's not greenery there. Like, it takes like even to change one single table name or single adding a new column takes like 2 weeks to do that. He has to go through the data architect. He has to design, come back to logical. It's just a whole lot of hell is there. And that's why Hadoop is so popular. You don't need to do anything. You just throw it and I'll just process you. Compute and storage is cheap. Now, the
Yes.
whole new role came, it's a chief data officer role. The chief data officer role is more like a cheerleader. They has to go and each and every team get the buy-in, educate them, bringing them. That's why if you see there's the reason the article I somewhere saw, the average tenure for any chief data officer is like hardly 2 to 3 years because they don't have any tools. They don't have any, thing that what data architect had, like everything has to go through me. Chief data officer don't have it. They're largely cheerleaders. So
Yeah.
they have to have some kind of a tools like data contract come in play, empower them to be more and more successful. And that is the path. I don't think we will go back to the data architect role. I don't think anyone will use Airline tool or any, I don't think anyone going to use that. So only way path forward, I see a decentralized data modeling via data contract.
Yep.
So that's my strong belief.
And also probably mesh and data products are layers that can accelerate this workflow also.
Yeah. So I think if anybody have any other different thoughts, like oh no, the data architect role going to be saying, or any other way that you can actually do the data modeling org wide, when we're talking org board, like in enterprise data modeling at scale, please come at us. We would love to know that and talk more on that. Right.
Perfect.
Awesome. So moving on, I think staying with the same thing on the data quality side, this week is fully back on data quality.
I don't know why we chose. I don't know if it was accidental, Anand. Like, I don't know. Why is all topics related to quality controls and ensuring value? I don't know if it was bias or it was just coincidental, but then it's good.
I think maybe we are biased. I don't know.
Okay, could be, but then for a better way. For a better way, yeah.
For the better way. So I think that's a very interesting article about action position data quality assessment framework. I think this is a very interesting framework. I never seen any kind of a framework adoption pattern for a data quality. I think I'm very happy to see this one. What do you think about that, Ashwin?
No, I think fantastic framework in its most simplistic nature, right? So either the WAP or you do. I think it's a very simple framework that can be followed by almost everyone. Now, in the enterprise world, there are more advanced frameworks that people use, which is something similar, but that's not common knowledge as well, right? So I think what the author did here very beautifully with the action position framework is he's taking us through what should I do and how do you define what is the action that you need to do based on the position that you are in for data quality problems, right? So because let's say take an example, right, of a typical data quality problem. Let's say the account balance that you have today for some reason is incorrect, and we have figured out that it's inconsistent through some tools. You have an observability platform, or you're using data quality contracts or profiling or whatever. That's a serious issue. You can't move that data back for any decision making. But let's say there's some minor data quality problem. Let's say there was an additional attribute which came today as null. But that's not core for your processing. How do you deal with both of these situations? Now, one thing that's common, I think, that also leads us from the data contract world, which helps us fix data quality problems, is data quality problems exist. That's the reality. Like it or not, we are nowhere closer to getting rid of data quality problems, right? Unless we shift extreme left with contracts implemented everywhere for every schema, every table that we create, your data quality problem is not going to get solved because your data is flowing at every layer, right? Now, how you action on that is very important, right? You don't stop the data from flowing. Otherwise, your business will literally get rid of data teams itself because they need data to survive the next day. If you don't give them the accurate data, you're gonna screw up decision making. Like at what level? What should you do with that data?
Right.
Now, reminds me of an old story again. 2010 or 11, I was implementing a warehouse for Nestle dryers ice creams, basically. So in Oakland, and every day morning, the truck drivers had to come to the warehouse and then take out the crates of ice cream and go. Some days we had issues with the data, with the join, the data will not flow through, it gets rejected or whatever. Right. So what we used to do is roll it back to the previous day, at least on a business continuity perspective. Right. We don't give them no data, but then we give them some data. I think that's what the author discusses, Anand. And what's your viewpoint on it, Anand?
Yeah, totally. I think the other kind of point out like what is the cost of fixing, like why is like the cost of fixing data quality is pretty high. I think just kind of I don't think anyone disagree with that. I think one thing that I found out in this article is kind of very interesting about he's talking about two patterns. One is WAP, essentially write, audit, publish pattern, and then the other pattern is AWP, like audit, write, and then publish, which is kind of a very this is a very interesting thing. I'm sure like many people are already using some form of like using it, but without really naming it. Especially the write, audit, publish is kind of widely getting popular right now. So write, audit, publish essentially says that okay, you are joining two tables and create a derived table out of it, or you do some transformation and creating this table. You write a new partition or a new fact that's come in, and then you don't publish that. You don't you write it out, but it is not yet visible to your end consumer or any downstream consumers yet to consume. And then you run through all the auditing and then it's like, oh, this is all fine. And then you publish, let the downstream consumers know that it is available. So systems like Iceberg, Apache Hudi is now kind of supporting it out of the box. Lake first is kind of built the whole pattern on the branching pattern, right? Like if you take this write, audit, publish pattern, essentially, it can closely resemble with their GitHub flow. Right? Essentially, you're creating a pull request, somebody do the validating, and then you merge into your main branch. That's what you're publishing, right? So it's a branching strategy. Lake first is one of the systems actually like full-fledgedly supporting multiple branching model for this whole WAP pattern. And all the Lakehouse systems like Iceberg and Kudi supporting that out of the box that you can write it and then you can run an audit before you make it a publishing thing. I think Dreamio actually wrote a good article. We'll be linking that into the description here. They kind of describe how Iceberg is kind of supporting the WAP pattern here.
Yeah.
If you don't have any out-of-the-box support for WAP pattern, what traditionally we used to do, whenever we're writing a new pipeline, we're writing that into a staging location first through all the auditing. If all things are fine, then we move the partition from staging to production table. We just either S3 copy or you just run another merge into statement into Redshift or anything. So that's a very manual way of implementing that pattern. I wish more and more databases kind of come and kind of support that out of the box, this pattern. It's a very interesting.
Natively, yes. Like you said, so the traditional way was you write it to an audit table and then you deal from there. And then tools, basically, some of the tools, like some of the legacy tools also basically provides an application on top which can read the data and guides them through a workflow. That's what people traditionally did. That I'm also interested to learn from the listeners here as well, like the audience here, around how are you addressing this in your organization, right? Do you have any best practices on how you address data quality issues? How do you action position things? And is there your imagination of web framework that you've implemented? Are there any industry best practices that you follow? Please do add and share it with us. That's going to be very helpful. We will want to share it with the broader audience as well, and we'd love to learn from your examples.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Certainly this is a very interesting area to kind of watch. I would love to connect with the readers or listeners to more to understand how they are using it. That brings the last version of it. Like that's another interesting topic again.
Your favorite topic, I believe, Anand.
My favorite topic, data catalog. Yes. The article essentially is talking about stop emphasizing the data catalog by Guy Fickel. I think that's a very interesting topic. So data catalog, what do you think, Ashwin? What do you think with the author view? Do you agree?
I unfortunately have to agree. While my day job involves me to have a lot of conversations around implementing data catalog and the power of the data catalog. But it has also given me a uh, first-hand information around terms of how people are using a data catalog. I think nobody debates. I think I don't think anybody debates about the power of a data catalog and what the promise of a data catalog is. I have no second thoughts. I think none of us disagree on that. The challenge occurs because data catalogs as a system are very, very, very passive. But your systems are changing faster, right? You create more tables, but the catalog has to read it, and only then the system is updated. I think, if I'm not wrong, you had written a lot of blogs around it. Your LinkedIn posts around that as well, where you talk about how data catalogs become outdated, and that's one of the common reasons why data catalogs do not get the consumption that it should basically get. Our semantic layer, the answer for a replacement of a data catalog and all of that is what the author basically gives us the choices in terms of what it is there. The other part of a data catalog is, and I think for people looking for data catalog solutions, this is very important for you. And if you're evaluating a data catalog solution, understand there are two cost factors to a data catalog with most tools today. Number one is the cost of buying a catalog solution. Unless and until you're going for an open source one, there is an X amount of cost for a catalog solution. Then there is a Y factor for the people you need to implement a catalog. These are not your traditional technical resources, because most of the catalog providers would provide your connectors, so it's a little straightforward. But you need experts who know how to navigate the organization and get the data that they want, and then add a semantic dictionary, which is what we call as a business glossary, or add more data to enrich the catalog to get the experience. So this cost increases the total cost of open ownership by a big factor. And I think one of the reasons why catalogs are suffering today is it's very passive as a system. It happens after everything has been done, right? It is like if an author is writing a book, he creates the index and the glossary after it has been created, right? So I don't have a very relevant example, looks like, but then you can't read through a 1,000-page book and then create an index and a glossary. No, you do it while you're creating it, right? So the whole design of a catalog kind of fails there. And that's where the author basically suggests probably the semantic layer is an answer, because with the semantic layer, as and when you're computing metrics, you add the dimension of semantics, right? Whether it is business metadata on top of it, whether it is enriching that with metrics, right? So it's probably an answer. Anand, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I think the alternative position, what authors kind of positioning, like on the semantic layer, right? That was kind of very interesting to me. I never thought of that, and this gives me a lot of interesting thoughts. Like, do we need to catalog everything?
Oh, that's a great point.
The author kind of arguing, right? The author kind of arguing essentially say that data catalogs became outdated very quickly, unlike the semantic layer actually. The discovery percent of the time.
Anand, I think you summarized the problem in one line. Right? You said, do we need to catalog everything? Probably, if you don't catalog everything and we only catalog what is required for the purpose of business decision making, does that solve it? Right? So again, we are thinking of alternative strategies here, but then I think you nailed the problem at its core. The problem is you catalog everything.
Yeah, I think that is a point that author trying to make, right? Like if you focus on semantic layer, what semantic layer is focusing, it gives you a very certified way of producing insight to that one. Don't worry about what is coming in, what is coming out, but this is your business is moving around that semantic layer. So if you catalog the semantic layer, you are 99% of the problem might solve. That is the author's hypothesis, and I found that very interesting. But my answer always to be the semantic layer side of it is like, I'm going to pull an Elon here, right? Have you seen one, right? I never seen that is this kind of a strategy being widely adopted it.
Yeah.
But this is a very interesting point in my opinion.
Oh, probably in the future, I think it may just become better and we'll see implementations of semantic layer. My conceptual model starts with And this is my ideal conceptual model, right? I don't know if somebody is doing it as of today. It should start with a contract where you define what the business team wants. So we're talking about domain products and everything as a product category here. Instead of creating tables and schemas, you now start with the product and which is heavily decentralized. I think that's what we saw the author talk about in the quality side, as well as in the articles about the case for data contracts, right? It's in a decentralized method where teams own the business teams, or it could be an IT team also, or a functional team, owning the output, including what they produce, the quality of it, the trustability of it. What happens is it starts with the contract. You are documenting everything. You have a fixed set of data that you will produce, a metric that you will produce with the quality that is ingrained to it. There could be deviations, but you also share the deviations also in a metadata format to people, like much similar to how telemetry data is done today. You would define all of that in a contract, and that is getting implemented. Now, in a contract, you're not just documenting that. In a contract is between two people. And in the catalog world, the whole notion of catalog is all about discoverability of data set. Now, in a product world or in a domain-driven world, what really we're talking about discovering of these assets. It's well documented in a contract, the left and the right. And I think probably, again, my hypothesis here, the answer to the data catalog probably is a stronger contract with enforced data quality validations and verifications. And then probably the catalog is going to be a UI that can be used to discover it and to do some workflows and navigation around data assets. I think that's what I see as how the data market can evolve. And that's my imagination today.
Yeah. I think Sanjeev Mohan is kind of also calling this as a data product catalogs, right?
Oh, yeah, correct. Yeah,
data product catalogs. But I don't know whether it's going to be like replacing let's call it a legacy data catalogs. That maybe the data product catalog might replace legacy data catalog. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah.
Maybe
I think customers answer that.
Yeah, maybe the data product catalog is a modern data catalog, and you can call it as other one, the legacy catalog. I don't know.
Yeah, I think could be. See, nobody's debating here. Again, just clarifying, right? We're not debating whether catalogs are useful. We are only debating the catalog in its current form and shape.
Right.
Hits a roof that doesn't allow people to scale the adoption of data assets within an organization. I think that's the point we need to change. I think most of the catalog vendors out there are doing a great job solving for the experience, solving for consumption. But I think it is, again, adding, like I said, you added layers on top of warehouse to solve problems because you ended up creating more tables. You needed to discover it. So you need to have a tool for search. So you added a catalog. Now we need to reimagine things and then take it from there. I think in that reimagination, I think contracts would come first, and that would serve as a documentation center. And then you may have a product data catalog or a modern data catalog, which will help user search, navigate, discover, collaborate, and all of that. So
yeah, I agree. I think going back to my data architect versus chief data officer example here, if you think last 20, 25 years, data catalogs remain the same. There's nothing changed in the data catalogs. If you take like 20 years old, what do the data catalogs do that? Even though we kind of branded it like a modern data catalog, they're trying to do the same thing. There's nothing changed. You go to a source, you are either pulling the data or somebody has no source, send the data. You connect to Redshift, you connect to, SQL Server like 20 years back. The functionality of the data catalog remained the same.
Yeah.
And the way it is functioning kind of remaining the same. Even though we kind of put the modern tag in front of it, it remains the same. Yeah. Maybe the UIs are more intuitive right now, and then it's easy to searchable. Maybe like the UIs kind of refresh a lot, but fundamentally it remains the same. But what is happening above this ground, the fundamental shift happened. We no longer using one or two data sources. The whole good old days of Teradata, or like there's one data architect designing this thing. There's like 4 or 5 sources of information that we are capturing, data cataloging, data architect man, and there's a data steward you can apply for 2, 3 data sources. They can go ahead and enrich your data catalog. now, if you take just marketing, there's like 30 different SaaS products there people are
Yeah,
using. And how are you going to appoint a data steward there? It's literally impossible to do that. The amount of data sources we're integrating, amount of data that we are generating from various different sources, it's very, very vast. And
yeah.
we can adopt the same pattern. And that's where I see the data catalogs are failing.
I'm with
Data
you.
catalogs start with a promise, end up with a very expensive integration system. And you mentioned about rightly, like, should we go to all the 1,000 pages to kind of build like a 10, like 1 page index? The problem is that even to go to the 1,000 pages, you have to cross seven ocean and seven hills
Yeah,
in order for us to travel that one. That's so expensive to that
yeah,
one. So I think that's why this space is kind of very, very wide open right now. I feel like a lot of innovation will happen.
yeah.
Uh,
I'm
Based
sure a
on
lot of innovation is going to happen. I think catalogs in its newer version may become very active and in sync with what's happening in the organization. So that's
yeah,
what I feel.
totally. Yeah. So with this, we came to an end of discussing edition 120. We'll be back with 121 soon. Thank you so much for listening. Please share your feedback. How can we improve? We'll always listen.
And your
Um,
best practices as well. I think for us to learn and share with the broader audience and educate the data engineering forums, I think we would love to learn from you as well. Just share your feedback and your best practices as well. Thank you.
yeah. Okay. See you all. Bye.